Welcome back. Now, there's a lot of discussion, debate today around an ugly incident in the heart of Tel Aviv last night. That was the final moments of Yom Kippur, when Jews pray for God to accept their atonement and inscribe them in the book of life. That serene, that deeply introspective moment this year, it was disrupted by a bitter, angry, even a little violent dispute that took place. The city's residents came to attend outdoor services in Dizengoff Square that have become commonplace in recent years as organizers have encouraged more Tel Aviv Jews to participate in these traditional prayers. But this time, many arrived with banners and slogans against religious coercion as they see it, furious that the organizers this year declared that they would defy a court decision and the municipality's clear guidelines by attempting to impose an outlawed gender segregation barrier in this public space. And it didn't go well. Now, before we debate the situation and everything in the backdrop, here's President Herzog today trying to calm the waters.
The Israeli internal threat is the most acute and dangerous of all. Just yesterday, in the midst of the holy day, we saw a shocking and painful example of how the internal struggle within us has escalated and become extreme. I know that I speak for the absolute majority of the Israeli citizens when I express deep sorrow and shock at the sight of our people fighting each other on a day that has always been a symbol of a beautiful, inclusive, and respectful unity, Israeliness and Judaism.
Now, to get into discussion around the issues, we're joined by Professor Yossi, former member of parliament of the Labour Party, and joining us as well is Gilad Katz, back on the program here, former political advisor to Prime Minister Netanyahu. Thank you both for coming in today. Look, full disclosure on my part, this does not define me politically, but I've lived in Tel Aviv for nearly 2 decades. I've seen and I've really felt the good vibes, I'll put it that way, the coexistence between the secular and religious in the city, especially when it comes to holidays and these types of communal moments to come together. To each coexisting, I'd argue, has been a healthy thing going on in the city. How do you see what happened yesterday? And Professor Yoni, come to you first. What was your perception on what played out yesterday?
Well, David, first I fully agree with your perceptions, your feeling that it is indeed unfortunate and very sad that we have reached this point of kind of quasi civil war between different sections of the Israeli society. And yet I want to remind us that the Supreme Court had made its ruling that it would not allow for gender segregation in public spaces. This is the first thing. The second thing is that nonetheless, it was not all that absolute. It was not all that decisive. It actually said that it is the discretion of the municipality, of the mayors, to ban or to allow.
Deferred to the city's decision.
Yeah. And the city made its decision not to allow it, which means that it is within its authority to decide not to allow it. And nonetheless, a group of religious people, and I do believe that I'm against the violence, whatever form it takes.
We just came to sort of pushing and shoving out there.
But I do believe that this act was done in defiance and very provocative on part of those that came to the city hall, if you wish, or the city public, or public spaces, and want to affirm their positions, their beliefs. And they said, it was very clearly, Tel Aviv is ours. We're very much interested in transforming the public sphere into a religious one, and even to have citizens of Tel Aviv or at large to become more religiously observant.
And that happens, I want to mention, this happens all over the place.
Yeah, and now I just want to conclude and say, well, I do condemn the violent attack or interference of citizens. And by the way, there was a failure of the mayor, who actually said that he had made a mistake of not convening the police to do the job.
Should have been others in there to kind of
because he thought that bringing the police, it would escalate the situation.
Gilad, I want to bring in, you've been sitting here quiet for a moment. Please join us, in terms of what was your, first thoughts when you saw this? I assume sort of last night when this news came before you. How did you take this?
Well, I was ashamed. I was ashamed that Jews decided on the holiest day of the Jewish people to try and prevent other Jews from praying in the first Israeli city, Tel Aviv. I was ashamed. There's nothing I can say besides a very big shame the problem is not what I felt. The problem is that according to all the polls, we can see there are around 10%, only 10% that are adamantly against the religious national values, and they took custody of Tel Aviv. It's theirs. Just like Professor Yoni said, it's their city. Well, I would just like to remind him, it's not his city, it's not his parents' city, it's the city of the entire Israeli people, just like Jerusalem is the city of all the entire Jewish Israeli people. I would just like to remind everyone, when ultra-Orthodox Jews use violence against the women of the world, every month, me and a lot of my friends or my colleagues that are religious stand up and go against the ultra-Orthodox Jews. We do not accept violence, doesn't matter where it comes from, that relates to the Jewish sentiment. This is something that is totally, I think, totally off the chart. And now there are 10% of the people that created a monster during the last 8 or 9 months, a monster that eats up anyone who even thinks he can talk against them. I can just show you what happened to Benny Gantz. Benny Gantz is not Orthodox. He's not from the national parties. And he is scared. He's literally scared to say anything that may somehow be interpreted by those monsters, whoever created the monster, that monster.
I'm that try to bring a little frame here. Look, Yossi, I'm bringing you into this. I mean, I believe that there's a bigger issue, obviously, as you're alluding to here, Gilad, that there's a frustration, some fear of the other that's, boiling over, we could argue at this point, stemming from the last, political 9 months right now. Gilad appears to be blaming this on, the people who are pushing against the government's initiatives right now. Describe the background here, Professor Yoni, as you see it here, in terms of what created a moment like yesterday.
Look, again, of course, I do agree that it is in continuation to the rift that actually splitting the Israeli society during the last 9 months or 9 to 10 months. But nonetheless, let me repeat, that it was not done in good faith on part of the people who came to Tel Aviv and wanted to claim
they knew they were going into the directives of the city.
I made 2 points. First, I do believe at the end of the day, the secular Jews should have shown more restraint and not interfere violently. No doubt about that. But at the same time, as I was saying, it was an act of defiance and provocative act. It is not it was not done in good faith. Well, we just want to come here and to pray. We want to claim the place. So I'm not going to claim the place in Bnei Brak or Mea Shearim. And even when there is gender separation or segregation there, I would not interfere. Of course, I don't like it that there is gender segregation even in the Mea Shearim and other ultra-religious neighborhoods, but I would tolerate it. So again, we have to look at it that the responsibility lies with 2 parties. First, it was an act of defiance and provocative act, and second, I think that the secular sections of the city of Tel Aviv should have shown more restraint. And third, as I was saying before, it is a responsibility of the mayor to act the way that he chose, he chose to act, but he should have.
Gilad, I want to bring this back to you because I see you shaking your head here. Look, the city, upheld by the top court, outlawed this gender separation in the public space, in this space. Not in synagogues that surround this area, where people have the option of going. So why should this group, Rosh Yehudi, be permitted to break the law, to do something that was clearly a type of provocation in this national moment? Why did you see that as okay then?
I'm not saying it's okay. I'm saying something else. First of all, I'm saying that this wasn't a provocative prayer. They were there. Rosh Yehudi started these types of prayers 2 years or 3 years ago. 3 years ago, and no one even thought of using violence to stop them.
They've been harmonious events. I'll give you that. They've been nice events out there. This was different. They went against the city's order here.
The problem is, that's what I'm trying to say. It's got nothing to do with this specific prayer. It's got nothing to do with it. Nothing whatsoever. We are talking about, as I said, a group of militants, of anti-religious militants who do not accept anyone who thinks other than their own values. And that is why they will fight them. No, it's got nothing to do what they do, where they do it, how they do it, who does it, as long as these people do not accept the mere fact that the Jewish society is a diverse society, and that there are over 25% of the Jewish society are religious. They will continue. It was now in Tel Aviv. Tomorrow it will be in Jerusalem, and in 2 weeks' time we'll see them doing the same thing in Haifa. It's got nothing to do with what we saw on Yom Kippur. That is the problem, and I think Professor Yoni understands that. We are in the midst of a battle of what or how do we see Israel? Is Israel a Jewish democratic country, or do we see ourselves like Denmark? And that is what we're talking about. Now, these 10% of those militants, those, I would say even zealous militants, they do not accept anyone that thinks differently than they do. That is why I don't see any, and that's why I was ashamed. I am sorry to say, I'm very optimistic. I don't see any solution with those 10%. I do see solution with the 90%.
Yossi, I want to bring Yossi into this to close this up. Look, we have about a minute and a half left, Gilad.
Just one more sentence.
A lot of percentages.
We are captured by those 10%. That is the problem here today.
Well, short
a lot of percentages being
we
thrown
cannot
out.
look at it as an isolated event. And my friend here, I think that the religious group should have also exercise some restraint, because they know that currently we are in an explosive situation, and they know in advance that if we're going to do that, they're going to encounter a resistance. So, and nonetheless, they decided to do that. So I think, again, I talked before about restraint on part of the secular Tel Aviv citizens, but at the same time, I think that the religious group should have also exercised restraint.
That's what I just said. It's got nothing to do with Yom Kippur. We're talking about
I'd agree with that.
10%.
There's a much bigger picture here than Yom Kippur. Gilad Katz, Yossi, Yoni, thank you for joining us here. Out of time on this one, though, gentlemen. And again, I want to highlight this is, harmonious scenes that play out week after week, every Friday, even at this location. There are nice examples of groups coming together in prayer here. This standing out, of course. Issues in the background. But thank you to our guests for joining here.